All right. Our topic today, this hit me, something that I've been observing, and it's, you know how there's things that you hear all the time and you see all the time, and you don't recognize what's in front of you immediately. This is something that, as I've been thinking about this, I'm realizing it's all over the place in my work as a therapist, both with couples and with individuals. So we're going to talk about the "I can't do that, they'll be mad at me" thing. I think this has a direct impact on relationships because in my informal review of my memories, I think this may be the number one reason that people cite for not functioning securely in relationships. And by secure functioning, I mean telling the truth, setting boundaries, going through the trouble of explaining how we feel, and participating in
I think John froze. John, did John freeze or did I freeze? Can somebody let me know? Either in the chat feature, which may or may not be working, or the Q&A. John has frozen. Okay. Okay. He will figure this out in a second. John, can you hear me? Yep, he's going to come back. He'll be right back. Clearly, I'm making notes to myself. John will be back momentarily. As soon as he gets here, I will promote him. Sorry about this. And we're at a stage where I can't really fill in because I don't know what he's going to say. So I hope everybody's having a nice day. Things are lovely here in Palm Springs. The weather is lovely. I am doing well, etc. Just killing time. Type your questions into the Q&A. We're going to talk about I can't do that, they'll be mad at me. I taught my sex addiction level 1 work group this morning, and last week we had focused on denial, but we were talking about it again today at the beginning of class, reviewing their homework. And one of the big lies that addicts tell themselves is, I don't want to hurt my partner, so I'm not going to tell my partner. So I'll just address this real quick. What I told the guys earlier is, the lie is what my partner doesn't know can't hurt her or him. In point of fact, what your partner doesn't know does hurt, even before they know what's going on. Hopefully John's going to get back in here real quick. But betrayed partners sense that something is wrong with the relationship even before they know what is wrong with the relationship. They sense the cheating partner pulling away, certainly emotionally, sometimes physically, or they sense the cheating partner coming at them hot and heavy physically as a way to cover things up, or hot and heavy emotionally, but running very hot and cold. And it's strange for the betrayed partner because the inconsistency doesn't make sense. Here's John. I'm going to promote him. There we go. And they often will blame themselves. So what your betrayed partner doesn't know does hurt your betrayed partner even before they know what it is they don't know. And we've got John coming right back. So you had just started with this, John, and we lost it. She said the topic was, I can't do that, they'll be mad at me, which is the reason that we often don't function securely in our relationships, and that's where you froze. So
my internet decided to take a nap, so I'm on my mobile data. Hopefully we're a little smoother now. Yeah, that's the reason why I see people it's the reason why they cite not functioning securely in a relationship. So I want to unpack that a little bit because in my estimation, in dealing with human beings, both as a person and a professional, anger, or I should say anger that we perceive, because I think that more gets to the root of what we're dealing with when somebody's angry in most cases. But anger that we perceive it's a part of being around people. It's a part of interacting with people. And so I want to offer some education, some insight, and maybe even some general guidance on what you can do if you find yourself having this problem. I don't want to do that. I'll make this person angry, or I don't want to do that. You'll be mad at me. Most people that I know don't do very well when they perceive anger. It's a hard thing. So the question arises: should I be able to handle anger better? I would say naturally out of the womb, no. It's a learned skill set. And should I have to? And again, I would just reiterate, yes, if you're going to be in relationships with other human beings, you are going to come across anger. And it's a really difficult proposition to expect that everybody around you doesn't show it so that you can do okay. And it might help you to be able to feel like you can make more forward momentum when both you can have good boundaries around someone else's anger and you have some capacity within you to deal with it and process it and not be knocked off course by it. So I brainstormed a few ideas of why I think or what the origins are of people's difficulty with anger, and again some general advice on what can be done about it. So the first one that I probably see most, I wouldn't say I see it most often, but I think it's the most damaging source, is when we have a fear of being wrong or bad. And so follow my logic here for just a minute. If we have a fear of being wrong or bad and someone's angry at us, that automatically means we've done something wrong and we are therefore bad. So anger, I can't stand it, not only because this is hard, anger is a hard emotion objectively, but because of what it means about me. If you're angry with me, you're telling me I'm wrong. You're telling me I'm bad. Oftentimes I'll hear too, well, I wasn't trying to. So you're telling me despite my best efforts, I've still done it wrong. This is what I would call a reflexive rejection of anger. In other words, this comes from a place of, I live in a world where I could never fathom, it never makes sense to me that somebody could be angry with me. So when you're angry with me, it does not compute. I won't let it compute. And I'll either get defensive or I'll get small and victimy, because I'm protecting my ego. I'm protecting myself against this perceived threat of being wrong or bad. This is something that you have to work on with your individual therapist. I've worked with couples where this is a dynamic actually on both sides. And it does not matter what we structure in the relationship. It does not matter what they agree to, until they address this part of them that cannot stand to have someone mad at them or be wrong or be bad. Until they address that, they can't move where they want to be able to move in the relationship. So that's what I'll say about that one. The other thing, the other problem I see with perceived anger is objectively scary. Anger comes usually with an elevated voice. It can come with an intense look. Some of us are blessed to have like an angry look be more of our natural state. In my family, we call it the RBF, the resting Burnham face. Burnham is my mom's maiden name. And we all have this face. We all just look mad all the time. But anger it's objectively scary and it's intense to deal with. The corresponding expressions of anger and the physiological feelings, whether you're feeling it or whether you're expressing it, whether you're receiving or giving, they are often tied to a fear response or a threat response. That's natural. For folks who I would say are particularly sensitive to anger, the threat response is disproportionate. So yes, there's always a potential for threat when someone's angry with me. Is there a potential for threat where I literally have to flee the room or I have to protect myself physically? No, not every time. So when we have the proper handling of elevated emotions, be that anger, it can be joy also, it can be sadness, depression. When you have the proper handling of those emotions, we can keep our choices open in front of us. And that would be my objective in either working with somebody on this or even talking about this today, is you have to have choices in front of you in your relationships. If you are relying on your reflexes to guide you right in relationships, you can only get so far. You can only do so much good. You have to be able to consciously choose a path that is hard. Because oftentimes in our lives and in relationships, the right thing is the hard thing. So we have to be able to choose to do the right thing, even when it's the hardest thing. To speak neurologically, it requires a lot of prefrontal cortex integration. It's not that your prefrontal cortex overrides the limbic system or other parts of your brain where fear and anger have their roots. But when it's integrated, your assessment of threat is better, it's more accurate. The options that you choose are better options, they're more appropriate. With prefrontal cortex integration, we can both feel, which is important, and we can fully decide what we're going to do. So feeling and deciding to full capacity, that's what prefrontal integration gets us. Integration takes a lot of practice. And it's not just about exposing yourself to anger over and over again and talking yourself off the ledge. General practices like mindfulness, meditation, body integrated things, emotion regulation skills. There's a whole suite of therapy known as DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, which is kind of all about this neurological integration, getting a lot of tools on board so that you can handle hot things from a lot of different angles, so to speak. Both anger and its reactions can be seen as impulses. So when I work with an individual who has what we call anger control issues, I first work with them on impulse control. Because again, that lack of PFC, prefrontal cortex integration, will let the impulses run, the naked impulse run. And when impulse is running the show, we're lucky if we make a good choice, because we're not considering long-term consequences or even short-term strategies. We're just reacting. So again, because anger is objectively scary, this is again something, work on it individually. This is also something I can work on with couples. I do a lot of facial decoding and body decoding. When I see one or both partners react to something physiologically, we literally stop the session and I'll ask, what are you seeing? And what does that mean to you? And why does it mean that to you? And have you seen this before on your partner? And sometimes through that kind of work, we can find that the scary part of the anger is actually a projection. And that's not to say like someone's just confused. It's like, well, my dad was always angry, and that's the look my dad would give me. Or those are the words my mom would say. Identifying those projections and working with those projections is really, really helpful in couples therapy, if that's how your couples therapists work. Not all couple therapists work that way. So moving on, another problem in my perception of anger, it can have to do with my past. So I've alluded to this a little bit. If there's a history of abuse or an angry parent, now the way that this works in encoding in the brain, the smaller and more helpless you are when the big overwhelming thing happens, the deeper it is in the brain, so to speak. So the more unconscious it can be and the more powerful it can be. So if you have abuse or anger or violence from your past, that is definitely something to take a look at. It's definitely something that when the time is right in your couples therapy to explore fully with your partner so that they can be informed about who they're with, why you're sensitive, where that sensitivity comes from, and then collaboratively, you two can work on the best approach to hold that. Anger as so not all anger, I would say, is a trauma response. Just because our body responds with, I don't like that and it's overwhelming, it's not the same thing as a trauma trigger. However, if you have had abuse, neglect, violence, that is a classic trauma trigger, anger. So remember how triggers work. It's like this spider web thing. There's the core of the hurt, And then there's all of the things that are connected to that. And because your body and brain are a prediction machine and their objective is to keep you safe, in trauma, significance will be tied to sometimes tied to stimulus that's like layers and layers removed from the core, but it's this predictive thing again. So if there is violence or abuse in your past, if that is a classically defined trauma, get some help with that. It can help to reduce the intensity of the triggers. It can help to reorganize time and place so that triggers around anger or difficulty with anger doesn't always have to send you back to when you were 5 years old and someone was screaming at you, but you can experience it more in your here and now as an adult. The last thing that I'll say about where some problems with anger can come from, it can come from your partner's past. So if you have seen your partner be violent or abusive, or even worse, if you've been on the receiving end of that, again, think of triggers. Anger and violence are not the same thing. Anger and aggression are not the same thing. They are related. So if your partner has been violent and abusive in the past, their history is going to affect how you see their anger and how you perceive their anger. Because your body and brain are going to say, oh, here we go again, brace for impact, or get out, or make sure this stops right now. So if you are dealing with your partner's past, of the three things we talked about, that is the most appropriate situation to come to your partner and say, listen, you have to do something different with your anger. This has hurt me before. It's hurt me literally. It's hurt me through abuse, through neglect, through icing out, all of that stuff. You have to do something different with that. Often what I see, it's a combination. The relationship and the individuals have to contract for something new that they're going to do with anger. And I'll talk about that more in just a minute. And the individual has to work on individual sensitivities and predilections to not handle anger very well. Which again, I would say, like the majority of human beings I know fall in that category of not being able to handle anger very well. It's a hard one. But it can be, and we'll talk about this now, it can be, I would say, actually a healthy, useful part of a relationship. And here's what I mean by that. So if two people are not of the exact same mind, the exact same need, the exact same worldview, when they have a relationship, there will be conflict in that relationship. Conflict is inherent in connection. It's not the antithesis of connection. Anger is one way that conflict is manifest. Somebody says something to you that you don't like. Somebody wants something from you that you feel like you shouldn't have to give, or you have been giving and you're tired of it. Once you're in a place where you're not just reflexive to your own internal experience with anger, or your relationship is not reflexive, meaning we use anger as the hammer for every nail, or we escalate to anger quickly, you and your partner can start to tackle questions like, is there a place for anger in our relationship? What are the things that you and I agree are worth us getting mad about? That can be, threat to kids. That can be insensitivities. When you're insensitive to me, you're darn right I'm mad about that. So talking together about what is it worth for us, or what's worth us getting angry about, where can we see anger having a proper place in our relationship, and then working together on defining how you're going to handle anger. We'll never slam doors. We'll never walk out on each other. We can be angry. And I see this all the time in the work I do with couples getting to secure functioning. Secure functioning does not include the absence of anger, but it does dictate that when you're angry, you still can't use blame, and you still can't use one person system thinking. You can be pissed and fair. You can be pissed and relationship focused. And it can actually be really, really helpful to be able to not just communicate, but to catch anger back and forth and hold anger back and forth. Anger is often a first step towards deeper feelings of vulnerability. I can't count how many times I've seen anger come and then deep, deep sadness or deep shame or deep regret. So it's worth it. It's worth it figuring out the proper place of anger, because sometimes it's a needed stepping stone. It's a helpful stepping stone to get to something that's more intimate and more connecting. So as with all things that are part of human nature, the ideal relationship is not built around keeping those things out. Let me say that another way. The things that are hard to deal with as human beings, we don't get a good relationship by saying this never ever comes here, we don't do this. It's by accepting, yes, this is part of our human nature. Yes, this may happen on occasion. Here is our expectation around this. Here's the bar that we have. To say anger is going to happen is not the same thing as a coupleship saying, so what? It's saying, yes, anger is going to happen. Our bar is, we're not okay with this being a driving force in our relationship. We're not okay with this being the last word in our relationship. But because we know it's going to happen, here are the steps that we agree to. Here are the things that we agree to make this productive, and even, dare I say, safe. Make this a safe emotion for both of us, so that we really can, to piggyback on my last webinar, so we really can tell each other everything. So I can tell you about the things that I'm angry about. I can also hear you even when it makes me angry. I would pinpoint this as probably the number one needed skill I see in people, is a better relationship with anger, a better ability to handle it, because it can become consuming and distracting in many cases when it doesn't have to be. So that's what I have to say about, I can't do that, they'll be mad at me.
Thank you. You mentioned that anger can be distracting. People can actually be kind of addicted to anger. Like, I'm having a feeling that's uncomfortable, I go to anger so I don't have to feel the other feeling. So just wanted to mention that. And I'd also wanted to say, I typed a link into what we call respectful conflict agreement. We use it with Seeking Integrity. It codifies a lot of what Jon just said, but the most important thing on that is we agree that we are allies and we're on the same team. So instead of fighting each other, we can identify the problem and fight the problem. And I think a lot of this is how we actually work through, yes, I'm angry, yes, you're angry, what's the problem? Mm-hmm. Let's fight the problem, not each other. And it's just a mindset tweak that I find it incredibly helpful when I'm angry with somebody. It's like, okay, let's figure out what the problem is and deal with the problem instead of each other. So,
yeah. Well said.
I have tons of questions, but I suspect they're going to come up in the Q&A feature. So I'm just going to go to the Q&A, and anything that doesn't get asked, we can deal with later. This one says, we can't seem to go out in public without incident of seeing some female who has athletic, attractive, dressed appropriately in athletic attire, without me seeing my husband obviously see her and turn to me. Instead, he looks until I ask him to turn his eyes to me, please. Then I become his mom. Yeah, no wife wants to do that. I get triggered, he gets triggered. We cannot seem to go to the grocery store anymore. Truth telling without defensiveness is still not possible for us. Any suggestions for me to not get triggered, because it has become obvious the behavior isn't changing? I feel like he does it on purpose at this at this point. The story I'm telling myself is his lack of empathy and maturity are on purpose at this point. So there's a lot in there.
Yeah. The thing that comes to mind for me, it's like this example gets overused all the time. So I'm sorry if this is tied to other things, but this is like Lucy in the football with Charlie Brown. So the thing that comes to mind for me is if you really need a behavior to change, and it sounds like both of you do when you say we're both triggered by this and it's not working for us. One thing that secure functioning couples can do is they can be honest about what's not working, and they can make plans to address it. So it sounds like you're saying every time we go out in public, it's terrible for both of us. So I would, in situations like this, I always look at, am I setting myself up to kick the football again? And if so, can I say something like, this is a struggle every time we go out. And what I would like to see is, when you're ready to invite me out in public with you, and you can protect me in this specific way. You can activate your protocols. You can come to me instead of making me catch you. When you're confident that you can do this, please invite me out with you again, and I would love to do it. Until then, I think we ought to minimize when we go out with each other, because we're really stepping on each other's toes here. This is a very common trigger that I hear about, and I work with both sides of this and couples around this. Like with a broken leg, I think it's important to give it a break so that healing can happen. And instead of you having to feel like you're the mom and policing it, my mind went to like a flipping the script. You tell me when you're ready. You tell me when you're confident that we can go out, and I don't have to call your attention back because you're on track. And I'll be happy to receive your invitation when that happens. There's a lot of situations with couples where it's set up as a no-win over and over again. So you two are in control of your universe. You don't have to accept that setup. You can choose a new one. And that may look like, for a while, let's just not do this for a while, because it never goes well for either one of us. And that's different from saying, I'm exasperated, I won't do this with you anymore. It's saying, let's give it a break so we can regroup, we can reorient, and both get the space that we need to figure this one out.
Yeah. Right in the middle of this, it says, truth telling without defensiveness is still not possible for us. And this is one of the issues with addicts, is they always get defensive. It's the natural state of being, and it does prevent, I can't do that, she'll be mad at me. But so that's one side of the equation. The flip side is the betrayed partner will say, I can't confront him, he'll get mad at me. And I think this is a perfect example of this, insecure functioning from both sides. Does this happen a lot?
Sure. And for me, it comes back to the fundamental understanding of what an intimate relationship is. It's not an exercise in trying to stay out of each other's way, actually the reverse. It's not like you live on separate houses on the same street and you're trying to keep junk out of each other's garages. You're 200 feet up on a cliff, tied into each other, and you are each other's only anchor. So if you have the understanding of what an intimate relationship is correct, things like, hey, I don't like it when you look at other women. It's not actually a criticism. It's hey, I'm telling you the way you're moving, it's messing with my footing, and I'm going to fall if you keep doing that. I need you to pay attention. I'm relying on you. That's why that communication happens in an intimate relationship. When you understand that correctly, there's a lot less room for defensiveness. And there's a lot more room for, oh, I got it, I didn't realize, I'm sorry. Or, yeah, I got caught doing my own thing and I wasn't thinking about you, which also happens all the time in connected relationships. It's not something to be embarrassed about. It's not something to hide. It's something to deal with.
Yeah. Thank you. A lot of people telling me it was you that froze, not me, because I asked them to do that. So thank you, everybody. The next question here, I jumped the gun on it. Apparently, partner side, I don't want to confront him because he will be mad at me, which I think you just addressed. My husband won't give up his friends. He went to strip clubs, and that he won't give up his friends that he went to strip clubs and massage parlors with. He says that with one, it's in throats 20 years ago. I don't know what that means. It sounds like they've been friends for 20 years. Thoughts on him not giving up his friends, that I see all the time, who he went to cheat on me with. So he's still hanging out with his cheating enablers and buddies.
Yeah, so in situations like that, just because I'm going to say this doesn't mean that it's wrong. It is a big ask to say, give up your friends. Um, Depending on the phase of life, sometimes friendship is about doing stupid things together. That's not a justification. I'm saying it is a struggle. Um, I think anything that a someone who has betrayed needs to bring into the relationship is a verification, hard evidence that the way they've arranged their life cannot hurt you again. So this is again where I would say, it's not just about the boundary that you have. That's certainly the impetus here, but it's also on your husband if he's going to say, or your partner, if they're going to say, no, these are good friends, they have to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. I would imagine in this situation, this is not a prescription, but that might include something like these people acknowledging to you the way they didn't have your back because they stood by while he did whatever he wanted, or maybe they even encouraged him to do whatever he wanted with his relationship. And they weren't thinking about you. You know, granted, their friendship may not be with you, but when you have a friend with responsibilities, you don't encourage them to blow that off. I would never say to one of my friends I wanted to go ride bikes with who said, you know, I'm with the kids tonight, can't do it. I would never say, put them in front of the TV and give them candy. They'll be fine for a couple hours. It's irresponsible. Um, so I would say with this, um, if and this happens all the time, like with jobs, I've acted out at a job, or you know, the home, all sorts of things. If it's not possible or prudent to just prune it out of your life, which is the easiest way to deal with that, then you as the person who's done the betraying, you have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is not only not hurtful, but it's actually relationship supportive. Um, and also keep in mind, this is not a jury trial. So it's not up for a vote. It's just a judge. And if the judge isn't buying it, who is the person who's been betrayed, the person who's buying this question or asking this question, if that judge is not buying it, then it's case closed. Either the friends go, or you're showing that I'm not really interested in supporting this relationship. So there's two paths, and I would hope that partners who betrayed in the situation will take that seriously, that they have work to do to demonstrate that harm cannot happen again, will not happen again. And they also have to show that there's a willingness to accept final judgment from the person that they're saying, please don't leave me, I know you have every right to. Which, by the way, that's the proper attitude if you've betrayed. It's recognizing you have every right to go. I don't have a leg to stand on. I gave away my power when I kept secrets from you. That's phase one recovery for couples, is accepting that and getting things aligned in that way.
Yeah. You know, when I was new to recovery, one of the old timers said, you only have to change three things: people, places, and things. I was like, well, that's everything. And he said, yeah, everything. And particularly people. You know, I had some drinking friends, I had some drug friends, and I had some acting out friends. And I can tell you that they're all gone. And I didn't have to do this because of a relationship. I wasn't in a relationship. What happened was, when I took my recovery seriously, I told them about it. And the people who were truly my friends, who truly cared about me, and there are quite a few of them left, they're still here. And the ones who were just there for the booze and the drugs and the sex, they're long gone. They didn't want to be around me when I was sober, because I wasn't any fun anymore for them. But the people who were truly my friends, they're still here, and they support my recovery 100%. They know about it. They support it. They refer people to me all the time. Even though they're normies, they're like, I have got an employee who's doing this. I was like, you want me to talk to him? Would you please? You know, yeah, if he's serious about his recovery, those friends are just going to go away on their own.
That's a very good example of proof beyond a shadow of a doubt.
this is how these friends are now with me. My recovery, my sobriety, safety in my relationship is my top priority. And my friends know that and they support that. What a person can move from one column to another, but they actually have to move from the column. They have to do it. You can't just say, well, I really want to keep them along. They have to make the movement with you.
Yeah. And if they don't, they'll leave. They'll leave of their own accord.
Yeah.
You know, my husband signed up for a conference to get pressure off from corporate. They wanted him to sign up. He knows I don't feel safe with him going. He mentioned the registration was coming up. He told me he signed up after he did it, which is good because he was honest, but I'm upset, angry that he signed up and we didn't talk about it. I'm afraid that things won't go well in recovery and he will just attend anyway. It feels like a looming threat to me. How can I help him understand this is what it feels like for me? The conference is 5 months away and he wants to cancel registration at the last minute. This feels like a long time to have this hanging over us. He would rather me feel upset than have pressure from corporate. I feel unimportant to him, like work is the priority. Okay.
It's good there's time to work with this. When you ask, how do I, what would you say, how do I make him understand, or how do I say this? I would just say what you said.
Yeah.
As far as understanding goes, that might take some time. And because this is another version of I can't have people mad at me. This is not diagnostic of your spouse, but I see this with enmeshed men all the time. And again, this is not the telltale sign of an enmeshed man, but this ambivalence. I'm going to make everybody happy. But if we don't pick losers, everybody loses. So I think staying focused on the pain, it doesn't feel good to me to have this hanging over, because what if you don't swerve at the last minute? What if it doesn't work that way? And is that how we want to live? One of the things you and I are working on is being direct and upfront with each other. Why doesn't that get to happen at work? What's the worst that could happen if you don't give in to corporate's pressure? Is this something you'll actually get fired about, or are you just going to have your bosses unhappy with you for a minute? All things to explore, but again, this is where share your feelings as they are, state your intention. I want something that feels better, faster than what you're offering. Are you willing to work with me on that? And like I said, five months is a good amount of time. You have a long runway. You don't have to use all of it, but you have time to figure this out.
Yeah.
In a way that's good for both of you.
And if he happens to be listening, you know, I will say, a long time ago, I was working for a company, and the owner's grandson, nice kid, but not a scholar, was going to community college and he failed out. And he would come and hang out with me all day while he was supposed to be at school, because he didn't want his grandfather to know and his mother to know that he had failed out of school. And I'm just like, they're going to find out. You know, the longer you wait to tell them, the more you have to suffer. And you know, if he's not going to if you're not, I'm speaking to the addict here, if you're not going to this conference, you're just delaying the inevitable, and they'll probably be more angry if you do it at the last minute than if you pull out now and they can find somebody else to go. So I don't know.
See, because you have some reputation on the line. Sure, you could pull out at the last minute and you could make up an excuse, and people would probably say, oh, okay, yeah, an emergency. But you'll also cement your reputation as an unreliable person. Reliable people are not ones who say yes to everything. They're ones who tell you what they mean and then they follow through.
Yeah. So life lesson for everybody there. Next question. I believe my husband is addicted to anger. Him calling me the worst names under the sun has escalated to an unacceptable level. He claims he's sober, and I feel like blowing up on me is his new soothing. We're having a joint session with our therapist next week to discuss this. We're at a point where no communication is possible anymore. I'm definitely not saying anything anymore so as to not have him lash out at me. It could be just asking if he's seen something I'm looking for and can't find. Not sure if he's in such deep shame that he has to keep me off him 24/7 because it's too painful to look at me. etc. And I think the follow-up here, as I feel this is never going to change since it's getting worse and worse. So yeah, anger is a soothing mechanism, or a whole bunch of other stuff may be going on here too. Thoughts?
Yeah, it happens. The comment I'll make is I didn't hear a clear question in there, but the comment I'll make is that definitely falls in the abuse category, being called every awful name under the sun. Like I mentioned here, with the exception of abuse, anger has a place. Abuse does not have a place, and abuse and anger are not the same thing.
No, and abuse isn't even really necessarily related to anger. It's more about control and overcoming my own shame and things like that. So yeah.
In abuse, sometimes anger is used as a tool, but just like a gun or a car can be used as a tool for harm, there is nothing inherently wrong with a car. It's the intent, it's how it's used. So yeah, this is definitely the abuse category. My partner's past. This is why I'm having difficulty with this. It's inherently unfair, unproductive, not two-person. You can still be angry and be two-person oriented, and this is definitely not a case of that.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump to the next one here. This is a great question. My situation is a bit different than what you described. Sometimes I feel I can't share what I need from my sex addict husband without feeling like he will go to shame. Any suggestions? So instead of I can't do this because he'll get angry, it's I can't do this because he'll go to shame. So any suggestions? And
yeah, so I apologize if this sounds flippant, but last I checked the research, shame by itself never killed anybody. Saying that this is the same category as anger. Feelings are feelings. And so sometimes what we say, it makes our partner angry or it triggers shame. The news story, the thing that's significant is not what did I feel, it's what did we do with it afterward. So the way you work through shame is not getting resilient in this like cabin in the woods and in isolation. It's dealing with your feelings as they come up. If shame is on the table and I'm working with a couple and I see them dance around it, I'll say somebody needs to come out and say what's happening here, because you guys aren't you guys aren't dealing with this. And I've had spouses before say, I'm really struggling right now because I'm remembering just how badly you let me down. And of course that's going to bring up shame. But the intent of bringing that up is not to put somebody under a boot. It's not to make somebody relive the past. It's this is what we're dealing with right now. And the only way you can get better from something, that you can heal shame, is to, I mean, this is all over Brene Brown's work, is you have to bring it out to the light. You have to talk about it. And that's where, when I work with couples with this dynamic, one of the first agreements we work on is, how are you two going to handle when one of you feels shame or both of you feel shame? You need a policy around this, because you run into it all the time. And I have seen so many different configurations, creative, effective configurations for how we can actually deal with the shame, so we don't have to set up our lives around avoiding what hurts. We can actually heal it. Where I see that go wrong is when one person unilaterally decides, well, you just have to get used to this, or you just have to deal with it, and they keep on with no sensitivity. Sensitivity doesn't mean that we just stop. It means that we communicate, that we're clear, that we watch each other every step of the way. How are you doing? I know this is hard. Shame particularly, the reflex is to avoid. That's the exact worst thing that can be done with it. So again, it's one of those, this is a natural part of how people relate to each other. Build it into your relationship, build it into, we're going to have to deal with this, because it's real and it's human.
Yeah. So this next one looks like it came in 3 parts, so I'm going to mush them all together for us. This goes back to the struggling to be out in public together role. So this is the husband. So illustrating the difference in perception here. I use the 3-second rule that Scott taught in class. And I turned away from the distraction. My wife proceeded to humiliate and embarrass me while we were there. And again, in the parking lot, I'm using a DBT workbook in an attempt to help her heal, but she still goes nuclear. I'm trying to help her be secure every time we step out in public. How can I help her when she shows me such aggression? So very different perception here. Same couple. John.
So what I hear in both sides, y'all aren't ready for prime time with this, and that's okay. I mean, this is a process. My question would be, when you guys are within the walls of your own home, and of course this isn't going to happen in the walls of your own home, but when you're in the walls of your own home and somebody's upset or triggered, how do you guys deal with that there? My guess is it may not be much better than what you're doing in public. So again, that's back to my original take on that. You guys might want to take a break from going out in public together and focus on something that's a little more contained, a little more, there's a little less at stake, and it's just as important. So you work on this in steps. Let's get our sensitivity and attunement to each other right within the walls of our home. Let's not take this out on a stage where the stakes are higher for both of us and the emotions are higher for both of us. Yeah, and I would say about that too, this is the truth about like every relationship interaction, that there's always multiple perspectives, and the vast majority of the time, my answer when I hear both sides of something is, oh, it sounds about right. So recognize that the goal here isn't to get an arrangement that feels good for just one of you, it's to get something that works for both of you. And one thing that I hammer with my couples, until you have that, don't take action. Don't do something. So if the imperative is we need to go out together, but we don't have a plan, we don't have a way, we cannot do that safely, don't go out together until you can make that safe.
Yeah. And I have a follow-up on these two questions together, and just kind of in a general thing, because betrayed partners always want to know what they can do to further the addict's healing, and addicts always want to know what they can do to further the betrayed partner's healing. And isn't the addict's job to deal with their healing and the betrayed partner's job to deal with their healing? And then we can come together and work on relationship healing. But I see one side trying to control the other and vice versa. And I see this all the time. So
Yeah.
thought.
Well, I would say it's a fine line. I think it's a perfectly fine thing for two people to help each other mutually in a relationship. However, what I see with couples earlier in recovery, I look at it as skill sets. They're really good at the skill set of being like really far into each other's world and knowing what the other one should do. They may not be great at the skill set of being far into their own world and knowing what they should do. So when I think about these kind of like complementary or balancing skill sets, you don't have to practice the one you have already demonstrated you can do really well. You do have to practice the one that you're not so good at. It's like threading a needle flying on a rocket to be able to give that kind of help effectively, and to give that kind of help consistently. It's not impossible, but it's really, really hard to do. So if you're going to attempt it, please be in a place where you're ready to be a good student and not just someone who thinks that they should be good at this and this should be working, because it's like more complicated than brain surgery. So that old advice, like stay in your lane, it's useful. I don't think it's the monolith of good relationship recovery. Stay in your own lane and practice helping each other, but know that with practice comes a lot of failure. And if you're not ready to learn from the failure and metabolize it, you might need to set yourself up to get a little bit less failure. Otherwise, you'll overload yourself. You'll overload both of you, and you'll get discouraged, and you'll turn on each other instead of being able to keep a focus on. We want to be collaborative. We want to be helpful. Just because we want it doesn't mean we have the skill set. It's not inherent.
Thank you. That was beautifully stated, really. I want to help you, but I'm bad at it. Basically, is
Yes.
what I see a lot. It's like I'm
Oh,
in your corner, but I'm terrible at it.
oh,
Um,
that's totally what it is. And then it's by consent in the relationship. Well, do I want your help badly enough, or do I want this skill set right now badly enough that I'll say, okay, I know you're bad at it, so I'm going to have to give you lots of feedback,
Yeah.
and you're going to have to be able to take it well because we're practicing. Or do we say, you know what, that is not the gator closest to the boat, and we will work on that later. Let's get ourselves a win more immediately. We need that.
Yeah.
All these things, so many parts of a relationship, they build on the thing that came previously, and it increases in complexity. So you don't have to do all parts of a relationship well all at once. Know what it is you're working on, and yeah, see it as real work.
Yeah. We are out of time. The questions have been coming in fast and furious today. And I got about 6, 7, 8 of them that we didn't get to. So I'm going to save these for next week. So copy and paste into my little document here. Okay, I got them. We'll deal with them in 2 weeks when Jon is back. I promise. And we might even just want to do a straight up Q&A since there's so many of them. And then
Maybe let's start with that and see where it goes.
yeah, so we'll skip the education in 2 weeks and we'll do a straight up Q&A. It looks like one more came in, which I will copy here. Great topic today, Jon. Thank you. Thank you everybody for awesome questions, awesome participation. Jon's work group starts in 2 days. You still have a few spaces left, I believe.
There's a few spaces left. So but you got to reach out like today.
Yeah. whitepinerecovery.com, or you can email Jon at whitepinerecovery.com. Did I get that right?
It's just jtaylortherapy@gmail.
Okay, jtaylortherapy@gmail. See, don't listen to me, listen to Jon. All right, everybody, thank you so much. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Jon, have a great weekend, and I hope the workshop is awesome. I know it will be, because I've heard feedbacks on your workshops before, and everybody raves about them with good reason, I think. So,
Thank you.
all right, hasta la vista.
Bye.